Google's Creative Lab in London makes it their mission to use digital technology to address some of our biggest social challenges. To talk about how creative people can be powerful forces for good in the world, please welcome Executive Creative Director at Google Creative Lab, Steve Vranakis. Massive round of applause. Steve.
Thanks, mate. And thank you all for coming over here instead of the volleyball. I just wanted to talk a bit about something that everybody seems to be talking about right now. And I wanted to talk about it through some of the work my team does and a bit of, I don't know, my point of view on this whole thing. Because I think a lot of the conversation is either about being incredibly sort of worthy and altruistic or being incredibly commercially minded. And I think there's a really nice sweet spot in between the two. And I just want to share some of these ideas with you guys. This is just a tiny blurb on Creative Lab, and we seem to change it every single time we come back out and do a talk. But we're a small team at Google. We're part of the marketing function. We try to reimagine our products and our platforms, do a lot of sort of experimental comms, and we work across all the different organizations. And some of the stuff I'm going to show you, we worked with our .org organization alongside marketing. And yeah, simple, try to invent the future. No, easier said than done. I was asked a while ago, just for internal purposes, this is by no means been sanctioned by anybody at Google, but I was asked to try to describe who we are outside of being designers and filmmakers and technologists. And my partner at the time and I came up with this, which was sort of representative and descriptive of this sort of mishmash of mutts that had ended up in the Creative Lab. But also this idea that there was this idealism in a positive way at the heart of what we do, because we had this philosophy that anything we did, anything that we put back out into the web or on mobile, had to make things kind of better. It didn't have to change the world necessarily. If it did, that'd be fantastic. But there's so much stuff out there that isn't doing much good, and how do you go out there and put something out that makes it a better place than it was when you first got there? And this is at the heart of Google. And why I wanted to show this was, this company set up a few years ago is fundamentally about the user. Every decision we make is all about ensuring the most sort of positive, user experience. And if we don't deliver what the user wants, the user will go away. So a lot of that comes from building this emotional connection and this empathy. A lot of people are talking about empathy, but I think, again, at the heart of a lot of the work we do is trying to show this empathy to a lot of the hardships that people endure in the world outside of places like Cannes. And there's a whole world out there where people are having a really tough time, especially right now. And especially in the UK, like in the last few weeks, you look at some of the events that have happened, and it's mind-blowing that this stuff is happening. So how can we use our creativity with a bit of technology to be able to at least make a contribution to it and try to make things a bit better? This is why we do it at Google, to remind the world what they love about Google. It's pretty straightforward. I think, as time goes by, as companies scale, that sort of thing, this is incredibly important to keep this at the heart of everything we do. This whole notion of reminding the world about all that sort of stuff that we did way back when, and we continue to do, and remind them about what they love about us. So now to the bit that I really want to talk about. This notion that we, as creative people, are much more powerful than we think. So the first thing, again, these are just sort of insights in my own sort of observations was, I spent 20 some odd years working in advertising, design, digital agencies before I got to Google. And I was really lucky. I got to work on things like the launch of Amazon in the UK, the iPhone, pre-Google, O2, big mobile brand in the UK. And I loved every single minute of it, and I loved the opportunity that I had to do these incredible things with these incredible brands. And the whole thing about selling stuff, I get kind of wound up about, because I think, believe it or not, people have to eat stuff, people have to wear stuff, people have to get on planes. And the reality of it is, if you can tell a story and you can add value to somebody's life to get them to do one thing over the other thing, I don't see any shame in that. And I was, as I said, I was very fortunate. I live in a house and I have a family that is based on my years in advertising. So my whole thing isn't about having one bad thing to say about this thing. But by the same token, I think there's so much to look at people, beyond And I think sometimes we focus too much on the commercial aspect of it. And I think that, again, when I was starting out, I started out as a graphic designer, and after many years, I ended up as an art director, then eventually creative director. And I think one of the things I used to see a lot, and it still happens, it doesn't happen in Creative Lab as much, is we would have the studio and the designers and the creative people who would be briefed by the planner, the strategist, and the creative director effectively had the overarching sort of point of view on what would happen or what wouldn't happen. And what we've tried to do is completely decentralize that. It's an incredibly democratic place that we run. But I also think it was incredible that, in my time in design and advertising, somebody would hand us this thing and tell us to go off and make it look a certain way when we had so much more we could do. And I look at some of these companies, including, if you look at the latest design enhancements that have happened across all of the Google products and platforms, there are designers influencing every single aspect of what we do. And it's gone so much further beyond just being this superficial lick of paint. And this is something our leader in America says, and I love it, because he doesn't say it like this, but he says, he talks about this thing about, this is something that you've got to be doing habitually in your everyday life. You shouldn't be doing these things at the end of your career when you make a bit of money or when you retire. You should be able to do what you're really good at and be able to make a positive contribution back to society in some way while you're still working. And I think this is incredibly important. And I've started to do these things, and I'll show you some examples of that. And they're not massive things. You don't have to become, a massive activist or anything like that, even though I have a point of view on activism. And they're things that you can do, and a lot of people are already doing. And I do believe this. I was doing an interview years ago with the D&AD, and I was talking about a project we had done called Science Fair. And it was this platform that we set up that got young teens around the world to put forward world-changing ideas. And there were some incredible ideas coming from youth from all over the world. A 17-year-old woman who came up with a way of predicting potential breast cancer with like 90% accuracy, like incredible stuff that was being put forward on a platform that we built. And I was incredibly proud that we were kind of the stage and they were the stars, and they were putting these ideas forward. And I remember at the end of the interview, the person from the D&AD said, "You're a bit of a creative activist." And I said, "Well, I think it'd be incredibly pretentious to ever claim I was a creative activist." And then a couple of years later, I thought, I think it's a fantastic thing, and I don't care what people say, for all of us to be able to claim to be, if you truly believe in that. And I think that we should embrace and celebrate this notion of being creative activists who are doing commercial stuff, who are doing personal stuff, but who are also doing good stuff, or maybe a combination of all three. So now I want to show you some of the stuff we've done, and I want to show you two projects that myself and some of my team have done. This is the formula. I don't know if some of you recognize it. This is the formula that Google X uses when they develop things like Project Loon, the balloon-powered internet, when they develop the autonomous vehicles, the driverless cars. And it's this whole idea of starting with a big problem, coming up with a radical solution to that, using cutting-edge technology. And if you haven't heard the story behind the driverless car is, this at its most basic, most simplest. I think somebody had a statistic or an insight, which was something like hundreds of thousands of people are seriously injured or killed every year on the road through traffic accidents. And then you look into why that is happening, and the majority of that is happening due to human error. So loads of accidents, humans are to blame. What do? Do you govern and restrict the speed limit on a motorway? Do you add more airbags to a car? Do you do sort of incremental safety features? And again, our leadership team is they hate, I don't know if it's a real word, incrementalism. They love radical solutions. So they said, like driver causing the problems, lots of problems, remove the driver from the car, you will have less road accidents. And that's the basic logic of it. So we tried to do this sort of methodology for some of the stuff that we're doing. So the first project I want to talk about is something that we did at the United Nations alongside the global goals that were stated last year. And we were tasked to come up with a way of connecting children, young people from a disadvantaged background from all over the world with the world leaders who were convening at the United Nations last year, and to create a dialogue between them, or at least be able to pass on some messages from these young people to the world leaders and give them a voice. And it's easier said than done because, how do you get all these young people from all over Africa, all over Asia, all over these, even Europe, all these places in front of these people? Physically impossible, near impossible. So we thought, is there a way of coming up with an idea where we could actually get them what they want to say to these people? So we wanted to build an installation. We talked about building an installation, a physical presence. And we wanted to give them a physical presence and then use technology to be able to relay the messages through the physical presence. So we started designing these figures. And you'll see them in a second. And we wanted them all to be representative of all the different people out there who had something they wanted heard. And these are some early drawings of some of that work. And then we had to work to the lowest common denominator. Feature phones are still huge majority of the population in some parts of the world. And so we had to figure out a way of connecting people with feature phones to a physical installation at the United Nations through the web. And this is what we did. We tapped into a system that UNICEF has called uReporter, and we were able to pose these questions. And anybody from any type of phone who had the short code that they could SMS back to was able to send a message to the United Nations through this installation that we designed. And it would appear on the screen on the body of one of these figures. And this is a rendering of the installation and what we wanted to communicate, which was we wanted it to mimic the arrangement of the General Assembly. So the General Assembly is the arrangement that all the different world leaders sit in. And we wanted to put this effectively in the main entrance, which is what we did, and we wanted world leaders to pop by and effectively be able to see that a representative from their country was trying to say something to them as they went into the General Assembly. And this is what it looked like. So the main screen would pose the question, and that question is the question that would be shot out to the whole world and anybody who was on the uReporter system. And then they would be firing back these responses in real time. And it was called the Assembly of Youth. It was launched by Ban Ki-moon, and I think you can see some of them. Mr. Beckham himself, which was fantastic. And this is a little film explaining a bit more about it.
On the 25th of September 2015, the UN General Assembly of World Leaders convened to discuss the global goals, a new universal set of targets to help people all over the world. UNICEF, in collaboration with Google, saw an opportunity to put disadvantaged and vulnerable children at the heart of their agenda. Using technology, they set out to connect the voices of young people to those in power. This is the Assembly of Youth, an installation bringing the voices of real children from all over the world to the heart of the United Nations headquarters in New York. Each figure represented a real child, speaking out about what matters to them. They were designed and arranged to mirror the Real General Assembly Hall, symbolizing a newly formed assembly of children representing their individual nations. uReport, UNICEF's social monitoring tool, sent a series of thought-provoking questions to a network of children in developing nations, inviting them to respond for free from any mobile phone, even with SMS, and have their messages appear in the main entrance of the UN.
I'm scared of walking home all by myself. I want to stay in school so one day I could feed my family.
We had to leave our homes because of the violence.
The hopes and needs of real children were put in front of world leaders as they made their way into the General Assembly Hall to initiate talks.
Eliminate poverty,
fight disease,
improve education.
UNICEF, David Beckham and Ban Ki-moon unveiled the Assembly of Youth in front of global media, and the initiative went on to reach billions of people worldwide.
It's our opportunity to change the future of the world and give every child an equal chance in life.
By bringing children's voices to the attention of those in power, we called on them to listen and take steps towards positive change for every child in danger, truly giving them a voice that could be heard.
It was pretty incredible to see when we actually put the installation together, to see these things light up and then being connected to different kids from all over the world. But I think one of the things I want to point out, again, back to my earlier point that we can all be doing this is, so my team is a bunch of people, as I said earlier, designers, creative technologists. We're not industrial designers, we're not architects, interior architects, we're not any of that sort of stuff. And we try to find the best partners to bring in to help us. A company called UVA helped us with this. But I think what we bring is this incredible, I'd like to call it creative naivety, where we're like, hey, what if it was this thing, and it was here, and it was in the entrance of the United Nations, and blah, blah, blah. And none of this stuff is easy. We make it up, we think it'd be cool, we think it'd be an interesting way to connect the dots, and then we put it forward. And sometimes we pull it off, and sometimes we don't. But when we pull it off, it's pretty magical. Next thing I want to talk about really quickly is something that we launched over the summer, last summer, called the Refugee Info Hub. And we all know what's happening right now with the conflict in Syria, the largest displacement of people since World War II. And it's just incredible to see what is happening, and to have played a very small part in being able to try to do something to help people. But so this huge displacement due to civil war, a lot of people coming in carrying smartphones, because a lot of what's happening isn't necessarily happening to the poorest. It's happening to people all over the place in this country. It's happening in middle-class neighborhoods. It's happening everywhere. And one of the things that we figured out was there was a lack of information, because these people were not only fleeing, they were being trafficked. And I was at a gathering of some of the leadership in Dublin, and I remember our leader, Lorraine, at the time saying, we have to do something to help these people. There's the money that is being raised and being sent alongside the aid agencies, but we have technology that we honestly believe can make a difference. We have language and translation that can help them communicate to people. We have maps that can help them figure out where they are. We have Hangouts and all these sorts of things that can help them call people if they have a connection. We have people who can provide Wi-Fi hotspots and connections. And I remember at the time saying, just putting my hand up saying, I'm Greek, my background is Greek, and I know a lot of people who are out there volunteering on Lesbos and these different islands that a lot of the refugees were being trafficked to. And I said, there's a serious lack of information. They get there, and because they're being trafficked, it's not like they're being handed brochures of where to go. They have no idea. The coastline that they come to from Turkey is on Lesbos, even though Lesbos is a tiny island, is a 15-kilometer coastline. So imagine being dropped somewhere along 15 kilometers and then having to walk up to 70 kilometers to get to a refugee camp. I mean, it's crazy, and I have to be careful because I really get emotional, because I put my hand up and I said, there's an information problem, lack of information, we can use our tools. And Lorraine, being who she is, said, get out there next week. And I took two Googlers came with me, and we went out and we spent a week developing this thing that we're about to share. And this is what we've seen, these images, this is what was happening, and is still happening to a certain extent. When we went over, there were 7,000 people a day, supposedly, or allegedly, coming in from across the Aegean, from Turkey to the Greek islands. And we had got there at a time where there were 30,000 people built up in Mytilene, the port. And you couldn't move. It was like when you go to a festival and you're outside, but you still get like claustrophobia because there's just so many people everywhere. And nobody knew where to go. Nobody knew like how to land, how to seek asylum, where to find transit camps, difference between a transit camp and a refugee camp. The refugee camps for Syrians and the refugee camps for Iraqis, North Africans, Afghanis, because they don't put them in the same camp. And we went there, and I remember getting there, and we got a car and we went to I think it was the northeast corner of the island, and you would see this. You would see people getting off. Sorry. You would see people getting off, and they were holding their mobile phones and their kids. I've got 3 kids, so I get really emotional. And they're like, holy shit, like, where am I? What am I doing? And they're crying, and loads of people handing stuff out, like bottled water, and like we had like bananas and biscuits, and it's like mind-blowing. Like I still think about it, and you're just like, holy shit, how is this happening in the world today, in 2016? Like, how is this happening? And I'm not like an aid worker. I don't know anything about this sort of stuff. I design like mobile sites and websites and installations and that sort of stuff. So you're seeing this stuff happening, you're trying to play a little tiny part in what's going on and trying to make it a bit better. So you're seeing these people, you're seeing that you can do something. You're going, like, this is where the land where the phone companies are king, like the queues for people to go in and buy phones and SIM cards and batteries and chargers. Huge charging problem. People were like literally cutting into the grid, getting electrocuted, trying to charge their phones. So these are all pictures that we were taking on the ground. And we built this. We took Google Docs. I remember calling from Lesbos. I called the team in London. I said, we got to do this thing. It's got to have these key areas, like how to find a place to stay, how to register, because literally it was like two Greek blokes trying to fill out forms with thousands of people queuing outside of the refugee camps. The buses that take you from the coastline, if there were coaches, to the port, to the ferry that would take you to the mainland. And because there was no sort of instructions or anything happening, people were just literally building up in the port and sleeping rough. And there were kids and sleeping on the street, and you had to like step over people. It was horrible, like proper, like it said, humanitarian crisis. And we took Google Docs, and we built this thing, and we built it in 36 hours because you kind of have to build these things quickly. We built it in black to conserve, I think, 40% battery. And it has sort of most of the things that you would need if you were able to get access. We provided Wi-Fi hotspots, we provided charging stations. We did what we could, which was a very, very small thing, but we did what we could. And it was just an incredible thing to be part of. And I want to just share the wrap-up film on this.
The civil war in Syria has forced millions to flee their homes, causing the worst refugee crisis since the Second World War. In the summer of 2015, up to 7,000 refugees were arriving on the Greek islands every day, often with just the necessities, legal documents, and mobile phones. They landed not knowing exactly where they were, what to do, nor where to go next. They needed information to ensure their safety and security, but much of the information available was inaccurate, out of date, or in a language they did not understand. That's why the International Rescue Committee, Mercy Corps, and Google created Refugee Info Hub, a mobile site for NGOs to give refugees accurate and up-to-date information. It's powered by Google Docs, a tool NGOs are familiar with, to make it easy to update with vital information as quickly as possible. Information like how to register and seek asylum, how to get to refugee camps, maps, medical resources, and anything else they might need, all in their native language. The site was designed to load quickly and in white on black to preserve battery. We let refugees know about the site through posters, banners, stickers, Wi-Fi landing pages, and volunteers. The site was created in only 36 hours and launched in Lesbos. Within 4 months, it was being used in 18 locations across Europe by more than 30 NGOs and counting. Because it was built in a simple way, NGOs can deploy and update it quickly and easily in any future crisis.
Thank you. So I'm going to go back in a few days. I'm going to go back to my job in London. I'm going to see my team. We're doing some cool VR stuff. We're working on some YouTube work. We're working on some Android work. And it's, again, like trying to get more people to get our phones over the other ones, trying to get more people to watch this and that sort of thing. And I will continue to do that because that's what I'm being paid to do and that's what I like to do. But I'm also going to do as much of this sort of stuff that I can because it's an incredibly important thing. And it's also the same thing. The same people who are doing the one bit can do this bit. And I think that's all of us. So I think we should all be creative activists because I think we are at our heart. So thank you very much.